Hello and welcome to Thought Squirrel Speaks. Today is Friday, August 20, September 26th. I'm Amy Beth, author of the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry, the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. Thanks for coming over. Even though I don't know what month it is. I mean, what are August and September if not the same month, right? The month of hoping of fall. And so yeah, they do get a little bit zippered into each other in my brain. But it's in fact September 26th because next week is October. Yeah. The most metal month of all. Gus agrees. 100%. He's all in. He is all in. Yeah, thanks for coming over. Not bunches going on here. I've been crafting. We went to a little like craft street fair last weekend, which was really nice. Gus went with us and I only had to pick him up 12 times. He's really great. Like, he loves people a lot. I don't know if you could tell. He loves human beings. I mean, as long as they're not walking in front of our house. That is not actually a human, that is a predator, and he has to defend us. But if you're not a predator in front of it, don't be tricked. Some of those predators are toddlers. Don't be fooled. They look like a toddler, but they're a predator, and he hates them. But if we're not, he loves humans. So, but it was funny because I don't think I've ever taken him anywhere. I didn't think about it at the time, but I hadn't taken him anywhere where there were like a dense concentration of humans. Like, yeah, like we've gone for walks, everything like that, where you like, but not like in a crowd. So he was a little bit like, what is this? What do I do? So yeah, Gus was very excited to see all of the art and all of the humans, all of the non-predator humans. I had to pick him up several times because there were like dogs in the vicinity. And I was just imagining that like he's sort of like overstimulated and I could just see him like going around a corner and like seeing the dog and being like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then like disproportionately freaking out. He always freaks out around other dogs. Like he barks at them like he's going to murder them. I have a lot of shame around my dog's behavior. I've really tried. I know I could try more, don't get me wrong. I have currently tried the amount that I am willing to try to take care of it. And so I'm balancing the amount of effort that it would take or like resources versus the shame I have. And you know, we're balancing at this moment. Like I have shame around his behavior towards other dogs, but not quite enough to inspire me to do even more to try to control it. Just honesty, y'all. Just honesty. He's never gonna hurt anything or anyone. Like, so it's not like he is problematic in that way. Okay, I'm starting to go down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry. We had a nice time. I don't need to explain like everything. I know, surprise. News flash to me, right? I don't have to justify everything with a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation. News to me. I have so many of them. Therapy, y'all. She's a wicked, wicked temptress. Not temptress. What is she? I don't know what she is. Avenging angel? I don't know. Carrying both destruction and hope. Anyway. So yeah, that's what's going on. Let's just get right into it. I have a shop update on October 1st. It's going to be all fall bags, so I'm going to talk about those now. If you're not interested in bags, that is fine. You can just skip forward to the next hootenanny on the timestamp thing. Okay. October 1st, 9 p.m. Eastern time, I will have an update at fatsquirrelfibers.com. And yeah, I'm really excited about this one because, hello. So I'll show you first. I have some sock size bags. Like, I'm not a purple person, but like this I can do. Like, I love this warm Julie purple. I also love like a dusty lavender, but okay. A gray lavender. But like, how good is it with these golds and oranges? Just like, ooh, scrumptious. We have a very traditional, like beautiful pine cones, leaves, mushrooms, apples, all of the good stuff. And then these are all good, but like, right? Are we seeing these guys? Same, buddy. Same. Like, they're all my mood. Uh-huh. Yep. Feeling you too, sir. 100%. 100. This one, oh. Yeah. Uh-huh. That's right, buddy. I may have to save one of these. Or just buy more of this fabric and make overalls out of it. So these are all a cotton linen canvas. They all have an unbleached cotton interior. In fact, everything in this update has an unbleached cotton interior, as do like 90%, 95%, 98% of my bags. I have one more in the cotton linen canvas, and it is a large wedge size, and it's just this beautiful warm brown with like all your hygge cozies. Right? You got some pie, you got some coffee, you got some tea, you got some cream, you got, just put a bird on it, like a little, right? Oh, so charming. We've got, so the rest of everything I'm going to show you is a denim, cotton denim. We also have mushroom houses on mushrooms. I have this one in both large wedge and sweater size. Oh my goodness, this one, y'all. I have this guy. Okay, so this, full disclosure, this has what some people might consider Halloween elements. So just be aware. But, oh my gourd. Oh my gourd. Like, how great is this fabric? So good. So good. Okay, and then I have sweater size. I have, again, a similar sort of, it's different than the other print, not just in scale, but in what's included, but has like a similar color palette. I have these really sweet hedgies in this like limited tobacco indigo palette, which I really enjoy. They like, don't they look like sort of like cyanotypes, right? Enjoy it so much. I've got like your cornucopia ingredients, your cornucopia elements, right? Oh, look, we're gonna put all these things. We're gonna make some beautiful fall centerpieces together. Wow, centerpieces. My mom was a florist when I was growing up, and so centerpieces were like a large part of my life till I went to college. Have I thought about a centerpiece since? I'm not entirely sure that I have. And then in my Aran sweater, so these are the big guys. These are great for sweaters. They're great for blankets in progress. They're great for just shoving 75 other projects into when you don't know what to take with you. And I just really, like, it's not usual that you get this color in a fall print, and I just really loved how this palette worked together. Just really sweet, and the scale is just, like, give me some giant berries. Giant mushrooms! It just has a nice, like, painterly texture to it. I really like. And then if you like more of like a stylized vibe, Sorry, there's always thread on everything. We have this super awesome, like, not scratch art at all, but like somehow gives me that feeling like if Lisa Frank were a fall palette maker and also did scratch art, somehow vibes? I don't know. But anyway, it just has like a great, like, oh, here we go. It could also be, okay, so when you were a kid and you went somewhere and they had airbrush t-shirts, okay, you went somewhere. You went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and they had airbrush t-shirts and you wanted one so bad. Or near Richmond, Ohio's Riverfest. Okay, so if you went to a festival and they had airbrush t-shirts, but you couldn't have one. Okay, so it's like that, but make it fall. And also, well, no, it's like that, but make it fall. But like in a fall color palette. I think that's what it is. I think that's clearly the inspiration the designers got. And then we have this sweet little like patchwork of just all the fun autumnal elements, right? We got these guys, which you know you're going to be picking up off your lawn for the next 6 months. They're going to be growing in your gutters any second. Just trees popping out. It's going to be great. Yeah. So I'll have all of those October 1st. 9 p.m. fatsquirrelfibers.com. Some of you have asked a couple of times if I am going to be doing more of the tabbed drawstring bags. I 100% will. The fabrics that I have for those in queue currently, in queue meaning on my shelves in my house, are not like specifically seasonal. So I'm doing sort of all these seasonal guys. And then I'll probably do some tabbed drawstrings in all likelihood, like in November and earlier December. So yeah, that is that. Okay, so then let's get into crafting. Crafting first, bake of the week. I'll try to put some pictures in here. I made the Smitten Kitchen pumpkin bread. And I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes, but if you just Google Smitten Kitchen pumpkin bread, I think it's the only one that'll come up. And it is currently my favorite pumpkin bread recipe. Okay. Last year, King Arthur put out, in fact, I think she and King Arthur both put out pumpkin bread recipes that used a full can of pumpkin, right? Because like it's mildly inconvenient when your pumpkin thing, your recipe only calls for like half a can or a cup or whatever. And then you have to like sort of like brainstorm about what to do the other part. I know you can freeze it, blah, 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 blah. Just saying. It's nice just to not even go down that path. So last year they both put out, I think this last year they both put out a recipe. Now, I tried both because that's who I am. The King Arthur recipe is actually, okay, the King Arthur recipe, I wrote it down, is called the Most Pumpkin Chocolate Chip Bread. As you can imagine, it includes chocolate chips. I am not usually a fan of chocolate in pumpkin stuff. Like, I'm not usually a fan of that combination, but I decided to try it as was written. The recipe calls for you to reduce the canned pumpkin, so it is an extra step and it's an extra pan to clean. And I did not actually think the results were worth it. But I did. What actually happened is I made both of them at the same time, or very close, whatever. Something happened and I was going to go somewhere where I was going to take one of them with me, and then that fell through, and so I did not take it, and I ended up leaving it in the refrigerator for a long time. It was the King Arthur one, if I haven't said that. And something really magical happened with, really magical in my life. Happened with the pumpkin and the chocolate. And there was like this sort of like moisture like this exchange of moisture that happened between them, where while the chocolate did not, like, because I used chocolate chunks, I think, instead of chips. the chocolate, like it had this like halo around it where it sort of like melded a bit more with the pumpkin bread. And so you had this like, I don't know, it just added like a whole different flavor complexity to it, which I really, really enjoyed. It made it taste, it brought out like more of like the fruitiness of both the chocolate and the pumpkin. Anyway, it just was really interesting. So what I have now decided is that I'm a person who makes the Smitten kitchen recipe, but adds the chocolate chunks, dark chocolate chunks. I just think it works and I'm a fan. The other thing I really like about the Smitten kitchen recipe, I didn't do it this time, but the other thing I really like about it is it involves like a cinnamon sugar along the top. And who doesn't like a cinnamon sugar top? Stop that joke. But the other thing I like about it is I feel like I am not a huge fan of that, the texture of the top of, specifically I'm thinking of like banana bread and pumpkin bread, like those high moisture quick breads, how the top gets that like, a nice word for it would be like puddingy, but like that overly moist, sort of like gummy almost top. It's not my favorite. And so this recipe that she has, you use like a cinnamon sugar top, it gets a little craggly, and so you don't have that element, which I do like. Wait, you don't have that element. I do like not having that element. I'm not sure what happened with that grammatically, but what I'm trying to say is I like the top of this one. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. I did this year make mine in, if you couldn't tell, I did make mine in a different pan. So I used a Nordic ware pan, and it's the wheat and pumpkin loaf pan. It's a 6-cup loaf pan. So it works perfectly for this Smitten kitchen recipe. And even with additional 3/4 cup of the chocolate chunks, it did not overflow. Now, did it have a flat bottom? No. It had like it domed up over the pan like you would expect the top of a pumpkin bread to look like. I did not use the cinnamon sugar on this one because I knew that the top would be the bottom. You know what I mean? Like you would invert the pan, and so like you wouldn't have that puddingy texture face up top, something. So I did not use it on this one. But so it does make a dome. So I did cut off like the dominess so that it would sit flat on the tray. And you know, that's terrible because that means you have to eat that part, but that's really convenient because you know you also have to test it to make sure it's not poisoned, because you can't potentially give that to people and it's poisoned. So it's very helpful that you have to cut off that arch top and then eat it to just make sure that you're not poisoning people. It's all about safety. So anyway, so that's what I did, and I really enjoyed it. And that is my bake of the week. Okay, so then in non-edible crafting, just a warning, I should have given you this at the top, but just a warning, I don't actually have knitting to show you this week. I know. But I've been working on my sweater, and that's where my knitting energy has gone. And so I've been doing a lot of other crafting in terms of quilting or piecing and cross stitching. So I do have those things to show you. So first I will show you in cross stitch, I have a new project. So a couple weeks ago, I talked about a pattern that I was starting. It was from another, the Artsy Housewife. And it was that one with like a bird and then anyway, it was like a limited color palette. I had started it and I was like, I really liked this pattern when I first saw it, but now I'm not sure. Well, I decided that I am sure that I don't want to stitch that right now. Maybe I'll like fall in love with it again. But something about the bird, it has like a very like hooked beak. And I don't know, it somehow like became, well, anyway, I just decided I didn't want to stitch that right now. But I did have this pattern, which was in my queue, and it is also from the Artsy Housewife. This one is called Flora, and it is this really sweet little owl portrait. The called for are Roxy flosses, which I didn't think I had access to. I did find out actually that my local quilt store, one of my local quilt stores, the Back Door in Greenwood, does carry them, but I didn't realize that. And so I got the DMCs. And there is a color conversion, like a color equivalent chart inside the pattern for you to purchase those. Okay, so I did decide though to use that same Aida cloth that I had tea dyed that we talked about. And so here is mine so far. This is 20 count Aida. I think hers is stitched on linen. Like, she does a lot of hers on Aida cloth, which I really like, because you don't see many designers using the Aida cloth. And I know it's a lot easier for a lot of people to A, access, and then B, work with. So I do really appreciate that she does use a lot of that in her designs. But this one specifically has been stitched on 32 count dirty linen by Zweigert, and it's 1/2, I think. And she does tell you if you want to use 2/2, how much floss to get extra. But I decided to just use this 20 count Aida that I had tea dyed, and there's my little owl face, right? I'll move my thread out of the way. She's so wee. Anyway, it's really sweet. It's a nice project that is not terribly big. On the 32 count, on 40 count, it's 5x8. How fun, right? And it is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 colors, which I do like a limited palette. Like, you know, I don't like to change my floss a ton. And I really am enjoying knit stitching on this 20 count Aida cloth. I can do it with just light. I don't have to have magnification, whereas 40 count linen, I definitely need magnification. But I really like, I don't know what it is, y'all, but there's something about stitching with the single strand of floss on really small stitches that makes me feel like a Victorian woman sitting on a windowsill, like making very small stitches into things. And for some reason, I really like how that feels. I mean, luckily, politically, I'm going to be a Victorian woman in 7 minutes anyway. So, you know. But something about making these very tiny stitches, but also having those stitches all be the same size without me having to make that happen in my brain is very satisfying. Like, I don't know how to explain how satisfying it is, but it's very satisfying. Like, I'm like a little mole in her little hole, just like stitching away on my tiny thing with like my garland of chestnuts and acorns drawing by the fire. Like, that's who I am. And I'm here for it. I will put here, okay, this is kind of silly, but I'm still gonna put it here. Last week I had showed you my honey top that I had sewn. And so I'm just gonna put in here like a little clip that I put on Instagram if you're not an Instagram person, which I totally understand if you're not, because I mean, I understand if you're not an anything person at this point. But the reason I said it is because somebody was like, oh, it has Hobbit vibes. And I didn't even, Hobbit vibes, I talked too quickly. And so, yes, 100%, my Hobbit vibes, my tiny mole in her hole, my Victorian lady sitting in her, next to her, in her windowsill. Like, I'm all of these things. But also really angry. I was like, don't be fooled. Like that toddler that you didn't know was a predator. I'm all those things, but also. Okay, so then in quilting, I have a new project to share with you. Oh my goodness, sorry. I was trying to figure out, like, I've been having this thing where I want to do piecing a lot. I say quilting because like the finished object is a quilt. But I've been having this, I just want to piece quilt tops right now. And I was trying to like think about why that was. And I think it really is there. It's a it's like a very controlled environment. It is consuming, right? It's not like knitting where I can put it down and look at the stupid phone. Like if I am quilting, like I'm pretty much all in. Like I have headphones or something on, but I'm not fake multitasking, right? I'm not like pretending like I'm doing 4 things at once, but doing 0 things at once. Like, so it's like the right amount of stimulation for my brain right now. And it's very satisfying. And also like nesting a seam just makes you feel like you can do one right thing. Like unquestionably. Like knitting feels subjective a lot. Like, yes, you ultimately like make something that is either a thing that you wear or not, but like there's all this like sort of gray space in between. Like a nested seam just fits together and it feels so satisfying. And if a point lines up, even better. Like if a seam lines up, even better. I don't need that part. I really mostly need the nesting, the clunking together of the seam allowances. It's just makes things right for that moment, you know? If you can just string enough of those together, maybe you can get through the week. So I think that's what it is. I think that's why I'm feeling very compelled to quilt right now, or to piece quilts. So I decided I was going to be doing this Bear Paw Patches 2.0. Again, I'm on this kick of like doing quilts that are, this is also going to be a gift. So it's just another delight to work on something that's not in my color palette. So it's just very different for me. And this looks like it's got like 12,000 colors in it, right? But what it really is an ombre. It's a set of ombre fabrics. Now, they have you use the jelly roll. And if you use 1 jelly roll plus your 4 1/4 yards of background and some binding fabric, you will get a 70 by 86, which is a fairly good size quilt. But just with 1 jelly roll. Isn't that interesting? You get all of that variety. And this is why, is each fabric, what I ended up doing is buying the fat quarter set because A, I wanted my quilt to be bigger. I want it to be like a queen size quilt for this person. And then B, I don't like sewing half square triangles from jelly rolls. I know there are different ways to do it, but the combination of those two things meant that I was just like, I'll just buy the fat quarters. But if you do like sewing half square triangles from jelly rolls, you could just get 2 jelly rolls and you would have more than enough for a bigger quilt. Because this one has it's 20 squares and mine will be 30. So obviously you could even make it bigger. You could make matching shams, whatever you want to do. But this is how this fabric works. It came with gray and black, which you don't use, but so that's why it looks like there are so many more fabrics. Like this one pictured only has 20 fabrics in it. 1 fabric per block. Isn't that fun? So yeah, it's been very enjoyable. It did take a lot longer. Like the blocks took longer than I expected, or take longer than I expected them to, but I've never done a bear paw print, which is what that is. And it does make sense. Like each block has 16 half square triangles and 17, well, no, actually 17, yeah, no, 21 2.5 inch squares. So it's like, there's a lot of pieces in those blocks. But so I'll show you a few of the ones I have. So this ombre fabric, it comes in both like the gray I showed you, like a mono gradient where you just have one color transitioning from dark to light. Oh, another design choice that I didn't tell you about. So as pictured, you just use white as the background, but I decided I wanted it to be a little spicier. So I decided on using this Tula Pink which has a very similar, well, at least it has a pretty good overlap with that color palette. And I'm really pleased with that choice. I was afraid that it might be too busy. I sort of like hemmed and hawed in the quilt store about it, but went ahead and decided, and I'm glad I made that decision. Okay, so that's it. So then, okay, so the ombres go from this, which is like just a single color, but it also has sort of like, this one is purple moving into a pinky red. And then this one is sort of a lavender, or like a, well, not lavender, but almost like a fuchsia moving into a sky blue. So anyway, it's really fun. It's been really fun to work on. I've enjoyed them quite a lot. And it's really nice because there's sashing between all of the blocks. Plus there's this, what equivalent is almost equivalent to sashing in here. So it doesn't matter if, like, it only matters how your seams are ironed per this square. Like, it's not like they have to all match up or line up, or, you know what I mean? So, because all of the little borders around them are going to sort of like take care of that. And that has made it very pleasant to work on. So yeah, like, that's just satisfying, y'all. It's just satisfying. Ooh, this is a good one for me to show you. It does match up a lot. Good job, me. Good job, me. So I've really been enjoying that. There's something else. Oh, and then I'll show you this. When I'm working on a quilt like this, where you, for example, like, you want to keep all of these squares together. Like, I want to keep all of these yellows together because they're all going to get pieced into the same block. The way I, quote unquote organize, like the way I loosely organize, is I use paper plates. Lori Holt sells like these like design boards essentially. And she also tells you how you can make them yourself. But the paper plates have worked pretty good for me so far. They don't need to be square. These are just happen to be square. And I've had these for a couple of years now. But like, when I'm cutting this pieces out, I'll just throw them all on a plate, like if they're all going to go together. And then when I am going to actually piece the block, like put the block together, I will lay out what it's going to look like. And that way I can, I just sew I piece from there. So this guy is up here because he's the middle bit. And so, like, again, if it's a shared background, like if it's a background the same for all the blocks, you just have your background over there. But also you could put a background in here or something. So that's what works for me. And I did have like 30 plates going because I had 30 blocks. But I really like it. It just is satisfying for me. Because I usually like to kind of cut everything at once, and then sort of sew. Usually I just sort of sew here and there, but this one I have pretty much pieced consistently. But it's nice if you do just sort of want to sew a block together every once in a while. You can just, pull out one plate and then sew your block together. And that's works for me. So just a little, I know I have some folks who are interested in like experimenting with some quilting. If you're interested, put in the show note, or, put in the comment section if you would be interested in sort of like, best tools for starting quilters or something like that. Just put in the comments anything you'd like to know. Maybe I'll do an episode on it. Oh, but I will say one thing. If you are curious, a person on our Discord server, so if you're interested in being on our Discord server, you can do that by joining us on patreon.com/thatsquirrel. There's a link in the drop down under squirrel support. So she is also sort of like trying out quilting to see if it's something she likes. She does love hand sewing already, but like quilting, again, is a different, just like, for the longest time, I only did craft sewing. And so like garment sewing, yeah, they're both sewing, but they're totally different skill sets, right? So for example, she does a lot of hand sewing, but she wants to just experiment with quilting. And so she's sort of like doing this point of like, well, what do I invest in terms of like, I don't know if I'm going to like it. She found out that her library, so her library has like a library of things, which a lot of libraries do nowadays. And they have available for checkout cutting mats and rotary cutters, and I'm assuming rulers. So yeah, if you're sort of interested in experimenting, but you don't know if you want to like invest in like dollars, but also square footage of storage, that's a great option. Just thought I'd put that in your ear if you've never thought to check it out. Another reason that our libraries and our librarians are amazing resources, no matter what technology does, right? Like no matter, they're just great community resources. So libraries, librarians, love ya. I realized about a chapter and a half into listening to this book that I have actually listened to it before. I just hadn't recorded in like my Storygraph app. And so for a moment I sort of was like, oh, and sort of like started to read something else. But then I went back to it and I was actually kind of curious why I went back to it, because I mean, I am always here for a person going off grid. I'm always here for somebody making a cabin out of like quote unquote nothing. Like I am always interested in that. I'm really usually interested in a narrative of a person living alone. This person does not specifically, like it's not a solitary lifestyle that he has. There are a lot of people that like visit and hang out with him and help him with repairs and renovations and things like that. So it's not like he's not like a hermit per se. But I do love those things as well. And so I sort of had this moment of like, why? Because it's not just like, oh, this is interesting. Like it does somehow fundamentally sort of feel comforting. And I was sort of like thinking about that, like why that is. And for some reason, it's never really occurred to me that not only do it occurs to me that I respect people who can sort of like make an existence that feels authentic and true to them outside of the sort of standard narrative or for what a life looks like that we're given. It's interesting because I also struggle with myself doing the same thing, but differently. Like obviously I'm not living off grid and making my own cabin, but like I do respect the thing about them that I also find really problematic with myself at times. I shouldn't say, I don't find it problematic, but I struggle to accept it with myself, is that I don't seem to know quite how to function in that standard narrative. And I'm sorry, I just had that realization. Thanks for being my therapist for this moment. But okay, so what I was going to say before I like had that like little is that I find it comforting. I find it comforting to hear stories of other people who just seem to just not quite fit in, essentially, like to make it overly simplified. And yeah, I find it comforting because that's also how I feel, which I just have never realized before. I just have been like, oh, it's comforting. Like something is warm is comforting, right? Not like, oh, it's comforting because I'm cold and that thing is warm. No, it's just like, oh, the thing is warm. I like it, you know, versus like it actually meeting a need in myself. So, okay, I'm still kind of like having a moment. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm going to take just a moment to like sort of do something here maybe. Okay, so then what you reading? I'll talk about a few of the nonfiction books I listened to this week. The first one is called Cabin, Off-the-Grid Adventures with a Clueless Craftsman, and it's by Patrick Hutchison. And here is the description. A memoir of the author's journey from an office job to restoring a cabin in the Pacific Northwest based on his wildly popular Outside magazine piece. Wits End isn't just a state of mind, it's an address for a run-down, off-the-grid cabin, 120 shabby square feet of fixer-upper Patrick Hutchison purchased on a whim in the mossy woods of the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. To say Hutchison didn't know what he was getting into is no more an exaggeration than to say he's a man with nearly zero carpentry skills. Well, used to be. You can learn a lot over 7 years of renovations. Cabin is the story of those renovations, but it's also a love story of a place, of possibilities, and of the process of renovation, of seeing what could be instead of what is. It is a book of those who know what it's like to bite off more than they can chew, or who desperately wish to. So I realized about a chapter and a half into listening to this book that I have actually listened to it before. I just hadn't recorded in like my Storygraph app. And so for a moment, I sort of was like, oh, and sort of like started to read something else. But then I went back to it. And I was actually kind of curious why I went back to it, because I mean, I am always here for a person going off grid. I'm always here for somebody making a cabin out of like quote unquote nothing. Like I am always interested in that. I'm really usually interested in a narrative of a person living alone. This person does not specifically, like, it's not a solitary lifestyle that he has. There are a lot of people that like visit and hang out with him and help him with repairs and renovations and things like that. So it's not like he's not like a hermit per se. But I do love those things as well. And so I sort of had this moment of like, why? Because it's not just like, oh, this is interesting. Like it does somehow fundamentally sort of feel comforting. And I was sort of like thinking about that, like why that is. And for some reason, it's never really occurred to me that not only do I, well, it occurs to me that I respect people who can sort of like make an existence that feels authentic and true to them outside of the sort of standard narrative or for what a life looks like that we're given. It's interesting because I also struggle with myself doing the same thing but differently. Like obviously I'm not living off grid and making my own cabin, but like I do respect the thing about them that I also find really problematic with myself at times. I shouldn't say, I don't find it problematic, but I struggle to accept it with myself, is that I don't seem to know quite how to function in that standard narrative. And I'm sorry, I just had that realization. Thanks for being my therapist for this moment. But okay, so what I was gonna say before I like had that like little is that I find it comforting. I find it comforting to hear stories of other people who just seem to just not quite fit in, essentially, like to make it overly simplified. And yeah, I find it comforting because that's also how I feel, which I just have never realized before. I just have been like, oh, it's comforting. Like something as warm is comforting, right? Not like, oh, it's comforting because I'm cold and that thing is warm. No, it's just like, oh, the thing is warm. I like it, you know, versus like it actually meeting a need in myself. So, okay, I'm still kind of like having a moment. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm going to take just a moment to like sort of do something here maybe. Okay, and then also this one is another book about people who don't feel like they quite fit into the thing and do something rather extraordinary. This one is called A Marriage at Sea, a true story of love, obsession, and shipwreck. And that is by by Sophie Elmhurst. And here's the description. The electrifying true story of a young couple shipwrecked at sea, a mind-blowing tale of obsession, survival, and partnership stretched to its limits. Maurice and Marilyn make an odd couple. He's a loner, awkward, and obsessive. She's charismatic and ambitious, but they share a horror of wasting their lives. And they dream, as we all dream, of running away from it all. What if they quit their jobs, sold their house, bought a boat, and sailed away? Okay, then I'm not going to read the rest of it, because when I went into it, that's all I had read, and I think that was a better way to experience it. Like this, like completely open-endedness of like not having any idea what happened, other than the fact that they are clearly going to be adrift at some point. So I really enjoyed this one. Again, I listened to an audiobook. I do usually read nonfiction in hard form, but both of these are sort of like the nonfiction that reads like fiction, right? They're like more memoir based. They're like less they're not footnoted. They're not annotated, that kind of thing. I enjoyed it. I think I'm going to think a lot about it in the future? Like, did it like strike a chord deep in me? Probably not, but it was nonetheless interesting. And if you're a person who enjoys a shipwreck story or a people overcoming insane obstacles story, like that sort of vibe, then I would recommend it. So thank you so much for coming over and visiting. Please do grab, if you haven't had one already, or even if you have, please do grab a piece of the pumpkin. The pumpkin? What would be a pumpkin? What would a pumpkin be? I feel like that is definitely a gourd that grows on top of the hobbit hole, a pumpkin. Don't you think? I think so. Please grab a piece of pumpkin chocolate chunk bread on your way out. Let it nourish you. Let it be a moment where you are just a person in a body consuming something delicious. That's a pretty good wish for the week. I'll talk to you later. Bye.